Hello, Helen here. Today's card's just going to be a watercoloured card. I'm using Distress inks to do my watercolouring, and I'm using the Beautiful Day Altenews stamp set. I'm starting off with a piece of Ranger watercolour paper which I've drawn my card base size out on, so I know where to do the stamping. I'm going to use the rough side just because it looks a little bit more watercolourish. So I've made a couple of masks out of full sticky post-it notes just using the main bloom, and I can work out whereabouts on the front I'm going to stamp my blooms. I'm only using two stamps out of the set. One is the main bloom outline and the other is the leaf outline. So I'm going to start off by inking up the outline bloom with Versamark watermark ink, sticky ink, and I'm going to stamp where I want my front bloom, and I'm going to put white embossing powder on it and then melt it with my heat tool. Once that's melted, I'm going to then mask that bloom off and stamp the second one so that it looks like it's behind the first one. So I continue to do the stamping. I've got the two flowers at the bottom right hand corner, and I've just got one flower at the top left hand corner, and then I'm going to do leaves around those flowers. I apologise, you can't really see the stamping on film, but it is there. Even I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing where I'm needing to stamp, so that's why I put the powder on, just so that you can see where it is. And then once I've done that, I have put it on a board with some painter's tape just so that it keeps it nice and flat while I'm doing the painting. I start off painting by wetting some of the petals just with clear water first. I'm using a reasonably fine brush, number 4, and I'm then going to just drop some of the colour into that and let the water do the work, spreading the ink out. Some of the petals I'm just, I've watered down my ink and I'm just painting it on to the petals straight, and then leaving, when it's dried off a little, I'm just dropping some of the darker or the more concentrated ink from the pad into the base of the petals, just so that it causes a bit of shadows where the petals are at the deepest point. I've got a piece of plastic to my right hand side just out of camera view, and I'm smishing the ink pads onto that and using that as my medium. So I'm using the Wilted Violet, and I've done 2 smishes. One I'm going to water down quite a bit, one I'm going to use quite strong unwatered. And I'm going to start speeding up the film. This ended up taking me about 2 hours to paint all up. I did the filming over 3 different days, just letting it dry naturally in between. So I did the first layer and I've let that dry. I could have left the flowers like this, they actually look quite beautiful just as they are, but I'm planning to do a little bit more depth to them, so I'm going to go back and put darker areas where the petal base is, or where there's a fold over of a petal. So I'm just putting in some more concentrated ink into those areas, and then smoothing it out with a wetter brush, and dabbing the extra moisture off with a paper towel that's in my hand. Sorry, that's when I put my hand over the screen, is when I'm dabbing it, some of the water away. Now I'm not leaving the water pooling, because that's when you get quite sort of harsh lines when it dries naturally, so I'm just trying to take some of that moisture away, and I'm working my way around all the petals. I plan to have the flower that's behind a little bit darker than the one in front. Once I'm happy with my flowers, I'm going to then work on the leaves. I'm using bundled sage to do the background part of the leaves. Now I've only just bought this colour, and it turned out a little bit darker than I'd wanted, so I've ended up dabbing quite a bit of the colour away with a paper towel. Once I've done the main background of that, I'm going to go in while it's still damp and add a little bit of mowed lawn distress ink just to brighten up the leaves a little bit. The last part of the painting is to go back and colour the centres of the flowers. I've used squeezed lemonade for the bulk of it, and then a little bit of mustard seed just to finish off in the very centre, and that's the painting finished. Once my flowers and leaves have dried overnight, I've taken it off the board and I've trimmed it down to my card size. I'm going to stamp my sentiment, but I'm going to use the Misty. Now I've got one of the acetate grid lines to use, which I put down over the card just to make sure that the sentiment's straight. This is a trick I got told about from a friend of mine, Diane. Thank you, Diane. It's just going to help me not get my sentiments crooked, which I have a habit of doing. You can download this grid from My Sweet Petunia, where the Misty comes from, and it's a great tool to have. So I've printed it onto acetate, make sure that my sentiment's straight, then pick it up with the lid of the Misty. I'm inking the sentiment up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then I'm going to clear emboss it with my heat tool. But I did do 3 stamps just to make sure it was dark enough on the bumpiness of the watercolour. It sometimes doesn't take with the first or second stamping. To make up the card, what I'm going to do is go round and roll a point that's just smaller than my base card right around in between all the leaves and flowers. I've gone in 3 increments on this Tim Holtz ruler, and I'm going to rule that all the way around the card and then cut it with a craft knife, leaving the leaves and flowers, and then I'm going to just fussy cut around those. I'm going to put a fine frame behind the cut piece now with some violet coloured card that matches the ink I've used for the flowers. So I've just going to trim that down so there's just a little bit poking out behind the cut part. Stick that down with some double-sided tape, and then double-sided tape onto the back of that and onto a black card base. Now the card base I've made slightly bigger than my usual size, so it's 7.5 by 5.5 inches. Just so that I've got a border of the black round past the painted panel. Now that finishes off the card today. I decided to keep it quite simple because to show off the painting. Now I'm not an artist by any means, but the distress inks are just so easy to use, and I find the method of just doing layers and just building up the depth of colour is the easiest way to do it, so you get some really good results from it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give me a thumbs up if you did. I'd love you to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.